Guys, welcome to Python beginning. This is lesson 1. Let's get started. So if you're coming from JavaScript before this, it's pretty similar. All of the concepts you learn, the ideas are pretty much the same, what variables are, loops, how functions work, but everything is just written and it looks a little bit different. We also are going to be working on a different website. So to be working in Python, we're going to go to replit.com. We're going to click sign up for free and select continue with Google. It's important that you need to remember which Google account you're using so you can keep accessing your Replit account and you can access the projects you were using before. And then it's going to ask you to fill in some information, stuff like the first and last name, and hit personal use as well as beginner for your software creation experience. And then it'll prompt you to create a new REPL, and it's going to ask you what kind of template you want to use. And you want to select Python because that's what we're going to be working in. So rename that REPL to be called beginning lesson 1 and then create REPL. So now you have a REPL account and you also have a REPL where you can work in today's lesson. So this is where you write code, and then if you're ever taking notes, you should put those somewhere else that you can access them. Okay, so our goal for beginning Python is going to be creating a number guessing game by the end of this session. And basically the way it's going to work is the computer is going to generate a random number between 1 and 100, and you'll have 5 tries to guess the number. And if you can't guess the number in 5 tries, you lose the game. And at the end, whether you've won or lost, it's going to reveal the name, and then it'll print out every number the user guessed. So if it was 50, it'll be like, oh, the number was 50. You guessed 1, 14, 25, and 49, and also 50. Okay, so now we'll get onto the lesson part. So, does anybody here think about if you know how to store information in code? If you took JavaScript, then this should be pretty familiar to you. So if you thought variables, that's the correct answer. If you weren't sure, that's okay. But a variable is basically a box where you can store a piece of data. So it's just a place where you can put information so you can look at it later. But you need to name every box so that the computer and you can remember what's inside. So if you name it like my variable, you know that some piece of information is stored in the my variable box. So you can put data into a variable and you can see what's inside. You can also assign a different piece of information to that variable. So you could take out the information in the box and replace it with a different piece of information. This allows you to organize information in your code as well as like remember information. Just like how you would use different boxes for school supplies. So like you'd keep your math homework in your math folder and your English homework in your English folder. So to create a variable, you should follow the format variable name, so that could be anything, is equal to any piece of data. So we're going to be working with a number, a word, or a math or code expression. So in this example, we have x, which is the name of the variable, equals 1. So in the x variable box, we've stored the information 1. Pi is equal to 3.1415. So that's another number. This time there's a decimal attached. And then in the my name variable, we have John. So this is a string variable or a word. And we know that because it's put in quotes. So anytime you want to store a word as a variable, you need to put it in quotes. And then y equals x. Now we're storing whatever the x value is in the y box. So this is essentially the same as doing y is equal to 1. And here, my math expression equals 1 plus 1. Here, it's not actually storing 1 plus 1. It's storing whatever 1 plus 1 is equal to. So this is actually equivalent to my math expression equals 2. Okay, so there are 3 main types of data because obviously, there's only a few types of data that we want to be able to store. So we have a whole number or an integer. So that's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are called integers or ints for short, INTS. And then, like our pi example, a float is basically a decimal. So we have a whole number plus whatever comes after this decimal point here. So 13 is an integer, but 13.189 is a float. And lastly, we have strings or str. So string is going to be words or sentences, and these always go in quotes. So string equals quote, and then quote at the end, and whatever is in there will be stored as a string. And it's important to note that you could also put a number here, but if the number is in between quotes, then it'll be treated as a string. So you could have 13 a string and 13 as an integer. Okay, so like I just mentioned, we can convert variable types from string to integer and integer to string. So here we have number equals 1, but instead of the integer 1, we have the string 1. We can see it's in quotes, so it's going to treat this as a word and not a number. So if we try to use a math expression, sum equals number variable plus 1, it won't be able to do that because it's trying to add a word and a number, and the computer doesn't know how to do that. So we can use the int and string and float methods to convert or cast these data types. So if we do number is equal to int function and then feed in number variable, it'll convert the number variable into an integer. So now number is equal to int number, which means it's an integer variable. So we can easily do sum equals number plus 1. And basically we have these three functions. So string will convert any variable into a string. Float will convert it into a float. So if you have like in a string format 1.12, it'll have 1.12 as a number instead of just a string. So we want to be able to use this later. Okay, so like we've covered, a variable is a box with a piece of information, in this case John. It has a type, in this case string, and it has a name, in this case my name. So quick check-in, I want you guys to make sure you know what a variable is and how to make one. If you guys aren't sure, you can go back through the video and listen to my explanation again. Okay, check-in number 2. So we have a few lines of code here. We have mystery number equals 42, direction equals west, grade equals 92.1, and country equals quotation mark, the United States of America, end quotation mark. So I want you guys to think about what is the data being stored, what's the piece of information we're trying to remember here, what's the name of the variable, and what kind of variable is it. So is it a float, integer, or string? So you guys can pause and think about that. If you guys aren't sure, again, you can go back through the video and listen to my explanation again. So printing. This basically allows us to write out a piece of information from our program. So the way we use it is kind of like the integer, float, and string functions. We do print and then parentheses, the variable name or raw data. And raw data means basically just the information without it being set to a variable. So we could type a sentence, but we'd have to type out that sentence again because it's not assigned to a variable if we wanted to repeat it. So in our example, we have pi equals 3.14, and then we print parentheses pi, we print parentheses, and because it's a string, we put hello world in quotes, and print 7. And in your terminal or output, it should look something like this, 3.14, hello world, and 7. So even though these are all different types of variables, they all look the same, or they don't have the like quotation marks or anything, because they're just outputting it. All right. So a quick activity, open up a new REPL or go to your beginning lesson 1 REPL and create 3 variables. Have it called my name, set it to your name in a string, so it should have the quotation marks. My age, it can just be a number, and a variable called pi or pi, and set it to as many digits of pi as you know. And then try printing it, just like the example before. And if you want a bit of a challenge, you can set a math expression, so like 1 plus 1 to a variable. You could even have it adding a variable to a number, so you could do like my age plus 3 and then print that out. Alright, you guys can pause and take some time to do that. Okay, so a good example here would be my name equals Kai, my age equals 17, pi equals 3.14, and math equals 1.1, or 1 plus 1, sorry. And then we print my name, my age, pi, and math. So another activity is you can add to your current REPL, you don't have to make a new one, and add 2 more variables that are a name and put in any variable or any data you want. So now you want to print each of them and also print the type of data. So you would do print and then type the name you use for your variable. So this type function will give you the type of the variable, and you want to make sure the type matches what you thought it was. So your answer could look something like this. So these are the 2 new variables we added, random variable 1 and random variable 2. This is a integer, 82, and a string, hello world. So what we added is we printed it out, and then we print type, and then another set of parentheses. So at the end you see we have two parentheses, random variable 1 and random variable 2. So this prints the expected value of the variable, and also class int and class string. So that basically tells us the type of random variable 1 is integer and type of random variable 2 is string. Alright. We can also add together string variables with this plus symbol. So instead of adding the values together like 1 plus 1, it basically creates a new one that's both of the values. So my sentence is equal to, again, each of these have their individual quotes because they're all individual string variables. So the quick brown fox plus jumped over the lazy dog. And remember, if you're adding two strings together, you have to add in the spaces yourself. So there's no space after the, but there is one before quick. So if we hadn't added that space, it would just be the quick instead of the quick. And when we print it out, it looks like one big sentence. That's called concatenation, or just adding strings together. Okay, a quick quiz. So how would you, if you wanted to combine two strings together, how would you do it? What are the different variable types? And how would you print out a variable if you wanted to output it in your console? You guys can pause and take a few minutes to think of those and come back when you guys are done. Alright, so the answers here, to add a string together, you have to have individual quotation marks for each string you want to add, have a plus symbol in the middle, and the three variable types are strings, integers, and floats. And to print a variable, you just print and then in parentheses put the name of the variable or the raw piece of data. Okay, why do we need variables? This is basically when we use them. We use them when we have a piece of data that could change depending on what the user inputs. So in this case, we have person equals Tom, and then we could do print person is a nice person. Really, when we output this, it could be Tom is a nice person. And here, we could just change Tom to be Bob or Kai or Steven, whatever we needed to do. And when we repeat a piece of data a lot, we can replace it with a variable. So you could just change person equals Tom to a different name. So we could have Tom, person is a nice person, person lives at, person is blank years old, person likes to eat spaghetti. And instead of having to change Tom to Bob every time, we could just change person equals to Bob. So yeah, now we can just replace it with a variable and we don't have to type out the actual piece of data. Okay, so a little bit more variable practice. I want you guys to think about how we learned about combining strings with plus or concatenation, and we can also set variables to expressions. So we can basically add strings and variables together. So we have this person variable where person equals Tom and sentence equals person plus quotation, and then that space there is a nice person. And if we print sentence, since it's Tom plus the rest of the sentence, it'll print out Tom is a nice person. So if you want to try this out, you can make a variable called my name again, set it to your name or someone else's name, and make a sentence for what you did today. And instead of typing just your name into the main sentence, do your name plus and then the rest of your sentence. And remember to have that space after the quotation mark. Okay, so an example might be my name equals Kai, and sentence equals my name plus quotation recorded a video today. So if we print sentence, we'll get Kai recorded a video today. Alright, so a quick check-in. I want you guys to think about, do you feel like you understand variables and adding strings and printing? If you don't, again, you can go back to the video, and I want you guys to make sure you could tell me what print number would be here and why. Is it 1 or is it hello world? And I want you guys to remember we can set variables to new information. So we can take out the old information out of the box and put in a new piece. Alright. So we're going to go over the answer real quick. It's going to print hello world instead of 1 because we basically replaced the old information with the new information. So this 1 doesn't exist anymore. We forgot about it and we only remember hello world. Okay, so now we're going to work on something cool. Okay, so do you remember this example we had, the person equals Tom, blah, blah, blah? Doesn't this kind of look similar to Mad Libs where you have a basic paragraph and then it'll ask you, hey, give me a verb, give me a adjective, give me a name, stuff like that, and then you fit it in with your own answers, and then it gives you a funny sentence. So we're going to create our own Mad Lib with 3 variables at the top. So my noun, my verb, and my adjective. and make a sentence like the example and print it out. So have like uh, my name plus and like decided to go to the store. They bought and then plus my noun. And then that noun was very and then my adjective, something like that. So you guys can pause the video and work on that. Okay. So that could look something like this. So my noun, my verb, my adjective. This is bird, ran, and smelly. So our Mad Lib is print the my adjective plus my noun plus my verb all the way to Mexico. So now we have the smelly bird ran all the way to Mexico. This could also be like something like the quick dog drove all the way to New Mexico. So it'll be basically whatever you change these three words to. So if we want to make it better, instead of just going into the code and changing something, we can actually make it interactive where we run the program and it'll ask us for this piece of information. So if we have a variable to equal to input in parentheses, the program will ask us to type something in. So whatever you put in those parentheses is going to be what the program prints when it asks the question. So if we have name equals and then input and then quotation marks what is your name, it'll ask us what is your name and set whatever our answer is to the name variable. So then we could print your name is and then a name variable and it'll be whatever they inputted. So go back to your Madlib program and add three inputs that are equal to the three variables. So my noun, my verb, and my adjective. And then make sure the question makes sense. So it's like pick a adjective instead of something that wouldn't make sense. So that could look something like this. My noun equals input, give me a noun. My verb equals input, try inputting a verb. And my adjective equal input, try inputting an adjective. And just like before, we can have the print statement that adds them all together. So this is going to be our main project for today, the number guessing game. So in this project, we want to take an input statement and add a variable to ask the user for a number. So we're going to convert this input into an integer because when they type it in, it's going to be treated as a word or a string, so in quotes, and so we have to convert that to an integer. And if we don't, yeah, it basically can't compare user input, which is a string, to a number. So to build this up, we're going to create a new REPL, call it number guessing game, and then we're going to be working on this at the end of class every day. So today we learned about variables. So for in this example, we have variable name equals variable value. Each variable has a type, so it's either a string, integer, or float, and how to print things. Print and then the variable name or the raw data. And to input something, we have variable name equals input, and then in the parentheses, we have question to the user. So use that information that you've learned to work on this number guessing game. So you've learned how to ask user input and see if you can figure out how to compare that to a number that you input yourself. So you could say like answer number equals 4 and then input what is your number guess, something like that. Okay, so if you were confused about anything, you can go back in the video or you can go to our office hours that are at this time and at this link. You can also find those in your parents' emails in our recap. All right, thanks for coming.